Back when I was in seminary, a term that we would often hear was this term, fraternal correction. And of course, it was something we didn't quite fully understand, and oftentimes when it would come up, it would make us a little anxious. Because what authority do I have to speak to someone, to my brother, about their struggles or faults? Isn't it better to leave that to someone else? Maybe someone with greater authority, or someone with greater judgment. Or maybe we even think, who am I to judge someone? Isn't that God's domain alone? And this mentality leads to a few struggles of our current culture. The first is a fear of speaking out the truth to our brothers and sisters when they need to hear it. And the second is a struggle with determining the very root of what is truth. And to answer the first, I would like to explain an often misquoted saying of Pope Francis, "Who am I to judge?" Because this statement is often pulled out of context, and people use it to make it seem that the Pope is telling us that we cannot call a sin a sin. We can't call evil evil. It's only God who can do that. However, that's not the case. Because in this situation, Pope Francis is referring to someone who struggled with a sin in their past, but is genuinely striving to convert their life and live a life of holiness. When Pope Francis says that, he isn't giving us all permission to dismiss sins, but is saying that people who still struggle while striving for holiness are not the same as those who don't care what God says and remain in their sin. For when someone converts their life, God both forgives and forgets their sins. Thus, who are we to hold one's repented sins against them if even God won't do that? And who am I to judge also does not mean that you and I are not obligated to tell others the truth when they need to hear it. That's actually the central theme of today's Old Testament reading. And I quote, and this is God speaking, "If I say to the wicked, 'O wicked man, you shall surely die,' and you do not speak to warn the wicked to turn from his way, that wicked man shall die in his iniquity. But his blood I will require at your hand." This means that you and I do have a duty and an obligation to preach the truth and to call our brothers and sisters back to Christ, something that we cannot be afraid of. And what about the second question that often comes up? Who has the truth? Because you and I know that there's that saying that the two things that you don't talk about with friends and family are faith and politics. And we are afraid to speak on faith because we know that it often leads to disagreements and fights, especially when people don't see things as we do. But does Jesus say, you should do this, but if it is hard or if it causes strife, don't worry about it, it's okay? Of course he doesn't. And that's what's hard about this. He calls us to it. And so we get back to that question, what is truth? Or the better question is, who is truth? Of course, that's Jesus Christ, as he tells us, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And where is this truth found? How is it safeguarded? Well, it's safeguarded and found in the church that Christ founded, the Catholic Church. Now, what does that mean for you and I who are in this church? We have a responsibility to share that truth. Never striving to invoke fear or condemnation, but always seeking to share in charity. And most of all, share with joy. Because my brothers and sisters, far from it being a cross to share the truth, it actually often becomes a very joyous occasion. To see or to witness someone coming away or realizing that the sin they're living is not healthy for them. Or to see someone coming to the truth of the gospel, to seek, to desire to become a disciple of our Lord. And these are two of the most beautiful things that you and I as Catholics can witness, because it shows that God is real and the church is alive. Thus, my brothers and sisters, let us never allow fear to prevent us from sharing the truth. Let us not use excuses to help prevent us from spreading the truth. And let us not rationalize or relativize behaviors, but let us follow the commands of the Lord and bring people back to the light and joy of the gospel.